Hi, Joshua. I really appreciate you taking your time to be on the podcast today and chat. This conversation isn't about selling anything. It's really about learning from leaders like you who are helping shape law firms operate and adapt in changing environment. I've done some research on SB Legal and your work in criminal defense. It's really impressive, but I would really like to hear directly from you the real story, what's working and what's changing in your world.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Specifically in AI, you want to know what's changing in my world?
Yeah,
Yeah.
about what client adapting to client expectations, new technologies. How's it going?
It's going mixed, I would say. This is a challenging time to be able to kind of understand what our legal tech options are. And um, it seems like we're in a phase where everybody's just adding tools, but we don't always know what the tools are for because sometimes the makers of the tools don't really understand what the tools can do. So, we kind of see this as sort of like an exploratory phase. We definitely have not like solved it. We have not figured out, like, it's not like we know exactly what AI is good for and what it's not good for, but we're trying and we're experimenting with some things. And hopefully we can, I don't know, get to a point where we have a smoother process and it can be a better experience for the clients.
That's really great to hear. So let's say if I would shadow you for a full day, what would surprise me most about how your firm actually runs behind the scenes?
A lot of it would not surprise you. So like I don't like it's not like we're a totally different firm than we were pre 2020 or something like that because of AI. But what I would say is, so like my personal kind of workflow, the way I use AI, um, I have Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT, the paid versions of all three. And the kind of probably the way I use them the most is like first drafts are hard for me.
Yeah.
And so I need a hype man during first draft. I read about this comedian who's trying to write a TV show, and it was going to be really difficult, and so he like paid some of his comedian friends to each like spend a day sitting on his couch like messing with their phones so that while he was writing he could be like, hey, is this any good? And he could read it to them and they'd go, yeah, that's good. And he'd go, okay, great. And he would kind of keep his momentum. And so I kind of think of those kind of chat LLMs as sort of like the not super smart comedian sitting on my couch who can like encourage me during the first draft stage. So I'll write kind of an outline and then put it into ChatGPT, and it's always like, "Oh, this is amazing! You're a genius!" And so I know that's not totally true, but like I kind of need that at that stage, and then I have to be more careful during the editing stage that I don't listen to it too much when it says that I'm a genius. So, I mean, so that's just one way we've tried to use it, but it's very ad hoc. Like I don't think we've gotten to a point where we totally know exactly what to do.
It's kind of interesting because I see those the LLMs, ChatGPTs and such, they try to complement you most.
Yeah, right?
Whatever idea you throw into them, they say it's a great one. So
Yeah.
my approach is like I always challenge it,
Yeah.
like challenge it. Is it a good idea? Is it bad? Why is it good? Why is it bad?
My so ChatGPT tends to be very positive. Gemini, maybe just like I wonder how much of it is how the model's personality, and I wonder how much of it is like how I've trained the model that I like to be worked with. So a lot of times when I'm doing first draft, I do ChatGPT and it says everything's amazing. And then when I'm editing, I'll take the same information and put it into Gemini and it will be a little bit more critical and a little bit more skeptical. So it's funny, like how at least my versions of the three, because they have memories and they know how
Yeah.
you've talked to them in the past. Like maybe because I've used them in that way, it's learned to do it that way, or maybe that's their natural personality. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling that this change that you're making with utilizing these tools are making some difference in
Yeah,
your day-to-day operations. It
yeah,
makes life easier. I admit I am not very good in writing first drafts as well. So I type out an email, there's always a decimal or a comma or anything wrong with it. I put it on these tools and they improve it for me.
yeah.
Uh,
That's a funny one. That I'm glad you brought that up. I just finished an appellate brief. That was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. I am embarrassed by how hard it was for me. It was just so much energy. And I got, I had it kind of basically where I wanted it to be in mostly substance. And ChatGPT had helped. I had put as I was going, I would say, "Can you help me with this sentence?" or "How could I say this more clearly?" And then I needed to proofread it, and I was very close to the deadline. And so I put it into each of the three main LLMs that I use, and I said, look for grammatical issues, look for citation issues, and it found significant. Like there was one example where I had it was like two he's were in an incident, and I kept flipping them so that it wasn't clear who was doing what. And it noticed that and said, "Are you trying to say this?" And then helped me. And then it kept saying that I was still doing it, but I had fixed it. And so I was like, there's a version control problem here, or there's some technical issue. No, it turned out that I had talked about that in a second part in the brief that I'd kind of forgotten about. And so it was pointing me to that second part, and I thought I was still talking about the first part. Anyway, it's kind of embarrassing, but I'm glad that it caught it pre-filing and not after it went to the appellate court.
Yeah, that saved your face for sure.
Yeah, that would have been embarrassing. And I wonder what it didn't catch, but hopefully we did a good enough job with it.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that. I know it's
Thank
always
you.
challenging, so good luck with that. So having a front seat to the legal industry and see how it's shifting, what is changing the fastest right now in your opinion? Or is it not changing at all?
I would say it's changing slowly. I think that legal might be a little bit slower to adopt than some other industries because of like privacy issues. And so here's what's changing a ton. I hear stories like this from clients all the time. From other attorneys all the time. So I recently had a client. It wasn't a super complicated case. Anyway, we knew what was going to happen in his case. And we had a plan to work out a plea bargain. And like the day before the plea bargain, he texted me and he said, I was talking to ChatGPT. It said I shouldn't take the deal, so I'm not going to. And then he copied and pasted the conversation from ChatGPT into the text. And ChatGPT was just wrong, or at least was wrong. Like, I'm not sure how he framed it. I didn't see all the prompts that he had given it. So I don't know if it was a mistake that ChatGPT made or if he had framed it in a way that no one could have answered it correctly. But he wasn't asking me to respond to ChatGPT. He was saying, "I've already made up my mind. I'm not doing this. We're going to trial." And that was not the right decision. So, he was not open to a conversation about it at the time. So I said, "Okay, let's set a trial date." And then we got closer to trial and he reached out and was like, "Well, what do you think?" And I was like, "Oh, ChatGPT's wrong. And, here's why. You didn't tell it this, It was this really tough evidence that he hadn't included probably. So we ended up doing a plea bargain, but it was worse than the first one that he had offered. And so I've heard a lot of my, honestly, like before I go to the doctor, I talk to ChatGPT about whatever I'm going to ask the doctor. I'm sure it drives the doctors crazy, but my clients are using ChatGPT as sort of a second lawyer in the room that's always a part of the conversation, and they don't always tell me that. They're a little bit embarrassed in the same way I don't tell my doctor that. So I'm not like mad at them for doing it, but it's just like a reality that ChatGPT talked to them about it before I talked to them.
Yeah, the access to information, it's access to research information now through ChatGPT is easier, but I think it's very tricky. Everything needs to be validated. And especially, it's not a mathematical equation you're talking about and in the legal field. Like there's lots of ifs and buts, and if you don't get it right, you're gonna get you're gonna get an answer that you would like to hear more than the right answer that you're looking for.
Yeah.
It depends on how you frame it. And was it was it an attorney you were talking about, or was it a
No,
client who came to
it was a
you?
client. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So my friends say that their clients are doing similar things.
Yeah, clients yeah, before I go into, so I remember this from my wife. During her pregnancy, she was always Googling symptoms, and Google always gives you the worst outcomes possible. When you go to your doctor, you're afraid about, like, she tells her worst fears, and doctor like, yeah, Google can't prescribe for you because they don't know what they're talking about. So I see similar behaviors happening with ChatGPTs and
Yeah.
and
Well, the challenge is it's so good at sounding plausible, right?
yeah.
And so like, hallucination is a big concern in legal. And what I find is like when it's something that I am very practiced at, like when I've spent many years working on a skill, ChatGPT is almost not helpful. It just doesn't know enough. And then if I'm really bad at something like image generation, like if I'm trying to, I can't draw. I'm just never been good at drawing. And so if I'm trying to explain to an illustrator what I want, they're like, I don't like, well, can you do a doodle of it? And I'm like, no, I can't. But I can with ChatGPT create like a quick mock-up and I can say, okay, this isn't exactly what I want, but it's close. And I like this font, but I don't like that, and then we have a starting point to work from. So like if I'm really good at something, it's not helpful at all. If I'm terrible at something, it's really helpful. In that in-between range is where it's kind of dangerous
Yeah.
because I kind of know and I'm overconfident and I might not double check everything, but it's just so good at making it seem like it's kind of right, but it's not right a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's always important to double check just with any research, right? When you're doing a citation, because sometimes ChatGPT, these that LLM modules are just made to talk, babble. They
Yeah.
would create a case out of thin air. It's
Yeah.
never there, and if you take it to the court, you will be really
Yeah.
on the
Nothing
back
more
foot right there.
embarrassing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
Nothing more embarrassing
embarrassing.
than
And embarrassing for you in front of the court and in front of your client. Like,
yeah. 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 That's all of our nightmare scenario. Like
Yeah.
nobody wants to be
So,
in the newspaper for that.
how are you approaching these conversations with your clients then about them using ChatGPT and coming back to you?
Again, they're usually not willing to tell me. So
Okay.
I think I can tell. I mean, I don't really have a way to validate it, but I think I can tell when they have brought me something and I'm like, that sounds like something ChatGPT might say. So it's been a little bit difficult. I would kind of prefer if they would just say, look, I know this might not be right, but I got this from ChatGPT and it's been freaking me out ever since. Can you tell me if that's right or not? So it's probably like it's kind of an old school answer, but it's like I need to build even stronger relationships with my clients so that they feel more comfortable telling me
Yep.
that they've used ChatGPT, or so that I can say, hey, so that they trust me when I say, look, ChatGPT's wrong in this case, and I'm confident. Those kinds of things I think are helpful. There is a tech implementation we've done that's not very ChatGPT. We actually have used ChatGPT at the end of this process, but do you want to hear my little? This is kind of my favorite current tech project. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
It's not. It
It's
may not be totally on topic.
No, no,
Okay,
no. It's
so
something that I was gonna go into next.
good. There's this problem where people tend to be overconfident in their own abilities, right? And lawyers are susceptible to that just like anyone. And there's lots of research that says like we just tend to think we're more likely to win our trials and things like that than we really are because we overestimate our abilities and we sort of know too much about our case. We can't really put it into the spectrum of all cases. So have you heard of this survey tool called MailChimp? Have you ever used
Yep.
MailChimp? So I was aware of MailChimp, but then I had a friend who practices personal injury law. And he was trying to negotiate with an adjuster, and he felt like his case was much better than what the adjuster said. So he ran a SurveyMonkey survey asking people basically like, how much would you award in this case? And it cost him like, I don't know, $600 to do the survey. And he sent me the report. He was just like, look what I made. I'm so excited about this. And it was really impressive. So obviously I don't have damages negotiations with adjusters, but I have lots of conversations with clients where they're trying to decide whether to go to trial or not. So like the easiest implementation we've had so far is I've had, maybe 5 or 6 cases where my client really wanted to go to trial. And I felt confident that we should not go to trial. Actually, let me tell you about a specific example where I actually thought we should go to trial, but we wanted to test it. Okay, so it's kind of a sad story, but it was a groping at a gas station convenience store. Do you have those in Canada? What do you call that? Like the place where you buy like a candy bar. Is that a convenience store? So he was the employee and it was all on video, but the video wasn't as clear as I'd like it to be. I looked at the video and I thought, this isn't a crime. I don't think this is serious. And so I called the prosecutor, asked her to watch the video with me. She was horrified. She was like, yes, this is a crime. Of course it's a crime. I showed it to my client. My client said, no, I don't think that's a crime. I showed it to my wife. She said, oh, that's definitely a crime. That's horrible. And so the client was trying to decide whether to go to trial. So we did a little focus group. And the focus group overwhelmingly said, we would convict. We think this is a crime. And so it was this time, like it was very humbling to me because like my initial judgment to it was very confident. The only reason I started checking was because the prosecutor thought about it so differently than I did. And so that's what prompted us to start doing these less expensive, sort of surveys. So what we try to do is we try to find a very simple we don't try to test a whole case. We try to find like one specific So for example, do you find this person likable or believable? We'll use that. Or if there's video of the incident, we'll protect the identity of the victim, but then we'll show them the video and say, okay, tell us what you saw. So we try to have like very narrow questions because have you ever taken a SurveyMonkey survey like on your phone?
You have to be very specific to get the results that you're looking for.
Yeah, there's this app that'll give you like a notification and say, hey, we'll pay you 10 cents if you answer this survey. Well, of course, people are standing in line at the store or, talking to their kids or whatever they're doing and they're on their phone. So you can't ask them like complicated, deep questions. You have to ask them kind of initial gut reaction questions. And so it's a little bit, I did a presentation on this for a continuing education thing recently. And one of the people said, okay, well, but are those responses predictive of trial outcomes? And the answer is, I don't know that yet. And I'm not totally sure how we would test it. But my instinct is that getting 50 people to give you kind of their initial reaction will help us make better trial decisions. Now getting back to AI, SurveyMonkey, when you finish a survey, they give you like a spreadsheet with all the answers on it. And I'm not a statistician, so sometimes I'll take the spreadsheet and I'll put it into ChatGPT and say, like, do you see any interesting responses? Did you notice a difference between male responses and female responses? And it's been pretty good. Sometimes it'll be wrong. Like sometimes it'll think that the column is a row or vice versa. So you kind of have to know the data well enough to know if it's kind of getting stuck on something. But it's had interesting ideas and it's helped me kind of explain the results to my clients. So I guess that's a long way to get to another random AI implementation that we're trying to use.
Yeah, I always like when I speak to anyone, I always like to use terms that they are very familiar with. So if you're speaking to a grocery store owner, you need to put the scenario in a way they understand it. And I find that people understand numbers the way you present it to them, as long as you're not being subjective,
Yeah.
and
Right.
showing the numbers.
Right. So like a lot of times the client will say, I think we're going to win. And I'll say, well, put a number on that. Like, tell me, how certain are you going to win? I think we're 70% sure we're going to win.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Do you think that's how survey respondents would say? Yes. So then I have them work with me on the survey. Like I don't just create a survey. I make sure that they feel good about how we worded the questions, that the questions aren't pushing in one direction or another. And then something else we do is we almost always put a question in the survey that asks, who do you think created the survey? Because if they all say, well, I think this is the prosecution, then we've gone too far in the other direction. And if they say, we think this is the defense lawyer, then we've pushed, do you know what I mean? Like, so I just want to kind of get a check on what they're thinking. So there was a different case that I had that was like a dating incident with another groping. I don't know, I represent so many gropers, but anyway, it was a really high stakes case for him. He was going to lose his profession if he was convicted of this, and he wanted to go to trial. And I thought it was a bad idea. My instinct in looking at the video was, I think we're going to lose. So we did it. We did one of these SurveyMonkey surveys. I think we got like 150 responses, something like that. And like 82% were like, we would convict. And so I got the results when the survey finished, and I just sent him the PDF that SurveyMonkey sent me. I didn't comment on it. I didn't, I just sent it to him without comment. And he responded a few minutes later and he was like, yeah, we need to take the plea bargain. It was such a high percentage that he was like, yeah, I get it. So yeah, like being able to quantify that, I think really can help. Because there's some lawyers who say, I won't quantify it. I have no idea what the numbers are, so I'm not going to pretend. And I think that there's some modesty in that. But it's just so hard to make decisions for the client if they don't know, they can't quantify at all their chances.
Yeah, that's true. You really need the way to present I think it's about presenting your way of thinking as well to the client. And being a criminal defense lawyer, this means you have clients from different backgrounds, right? You might have a lawyer as well, or you might have a person who like a plumber or something else, and they all have different views on life, different perspectives, and I think different experiences. I think you really need to tailor your approach to every single one of them so that they make sure that you both speak the same language. Is it one of the difficulties you have with your clients? How do you make? Is it how you meet their expectations? Is it a way?
That's a good question. One trick on this is if they're referred to me, our relationship starts in such a better place that it's much easier for them to trust me versus if they just found me on Google and they're like, I don't know, he looks like all the other lawyers. Sure, yeah, I'll take him, if they start out with, a certain level of trust, it's much, much easier. But I think it goes back to what we talked about like the relationship, like legal advice, kind of like doctors. I really admire doctors. Maybe I'm trying to compare myself too much to a doctor, but kind of like doctors, it's like a very personal type of advice. And so, if I haven't done the work to build the relationship with them, then I'm not going to be able to help them make good decisions. So it's kind of like an anti-AI part of it, like where, like there's this company in Utah that's a legal tech company that's trying to build automated like case update notifications.
Yep.
And I'm a little bit skeptical of using that kind of technology because it would give my clients more information, but usually they don't have an information problem. They have like an emotional problem or a trust problem or something like that. And so, so just giving them more updates on like, oh, I talked to the prosecutor today. I don't know that that's going to be what helps their, like what you said about their expectations. It's not going to help them feel more comfortable in the process. Something that I've tried to do too is like during the initial consultation, the very first meeting that I have with them, which is almost always by phone now. It used to be probably 60% in person, and now it's probably 90% on the phone. But what I try to do in that conversation is not tell them, if you work with me, it's going to be like blank. I try not to do that. Instead, I try to just do that in the initial consultation and then say, you know, when we get towards the end of the conversation, say, hey, I've really enjoyed speaking with you. Is this something that you would want to do more? Do you want more of this? And if they say, yeah, this is great, I want more of it. I feel much more calm now. I don't feel as anxious. I'm not as scared. Great. You know, here's what it would look like to work with me. No pressure. Think about it to see what you want to do. So instead of trying to say, hey, you should hire me because I'm going to win your case when I haven't seen their evidence, I don't know. There's just too much that I don't know about their case, but just trying to like be really useful to them in that first, 20-minute conversation. And then just be like, yeah, I mean, if you'd like more of this, I think you'd be a great client to work with us. I'd love to work with you, but not try to manipulate that or control it. Just, put it in there.
Yeah, that's great. And you speak to clients a lot on the phone. Is that how most of the time you spend your time with? Like approximately how many phone calls do you get per working month?
We started doing this voice over IP service because I used to just use my cell phone and now we're using, and so I could like just pull a report and it would tell me. I don't actually, I probably should. I haven't thought about that. We probably have like, I don't know, 80 active cases right now, and probably 15 of those are mine. My role is a little bit more focused on like building relationships with other attorneys, finding new clients, and the other attorney is more, in court with the clients and things like that. So I probably do 5 or so client calls with existing or new clients per day. So it's not overwhelming. And there is like a right number for that. Like there was a time when I would do like 20 and it's just too many. Like I can't, it runs my energy dry. But if I only do one, sometimes I'm like, oh, I kind of want to talk to a client. So there's like kind of an ideal number. There's like a sweet spot.
Like it sounds like you created a pre-qualification system in
Yeah.
place to qualify those leads that's coming in, and not every client is. It's a two-way street, right? They want to work with you, and you want to work with them as well.
That's one
So
of
it's
the
two-way street.
biggest, yeah, that has changed my day-to-day practice more than almost anything we've done.
Yeah.
For when I first started my practice, it was just me and this other lawyer. We didn't even have staff yet. And I had read some of these statistics about like inbound calls, inbound sales. And one of, they would say like, if you respond within 6 minutes, you're 82 per, I don't know. I don't remember the numbers, but it was just like quick responses lead to greater sign up rate. And so I would like explicitly tell my partner, tell my staff, like my job is to be interrupted. Like that's my job. The more, and so I would do however many people called, I would try to call them back all the same day, and I wouldn't have any screening for them. They would talk to me like as soon as possible. Like if they had a legal case, they would talk to me and then we would decide if it was something I could help with. And I was, anyway, so we did that for many years, and I had staff and I was just feeling really anxious and overwhelmed, and I just felt like I could never like think a thought, because I could get interrupted at any time. So we started a thing where one of my paralegals talks to all the clients before they speak to me, and he has screening criteria. And then when he puts it on my calendar, he can't put it on the calendar for that same day. It's always for the next day at the earliest. And then he puts a score, I think this is on a scale of 1 to 5, this is a 4 client. And then I put a score 2 before I talk to the client, but just based on what he's put in the calendar notes, so that we can start to kind of calibrate, like this is somebody I really want to talk to versus I'll talk to them if I have nothing else going on, or don't put this person on my calendar at all. And so that has been amazing. I think it's really helped me focus better on the clients that are like really great fit clients and spend less time with people who are just not going to hire me or I'm not going to agree to work on their case. And it's let me just like be able to think more clearly and not be interrupted all day. So like at the beginning of the day, I know when I have consultations scheduled and it's not going to change. Somebody might cancel, but it's not going to add any new ones. And that's been a huge, it was very scary because I felt like that's the flow that matters the most, right? Like, what if he's a bad screener or what, but he's been amazing and it's made my practice much better.
That's great. And going back to tech adoption, what's been the hardest to keep up with?
Again, like one of the biggest problems is there's just so many options.
Yeah.
So my clients had my cell phone. They still kind of do, but we're trying this voice over IP solution. I think it's called VXT. And, it took us a long time to just decide, okay, we're going to try this because like a lot of times people will call me and say like, hey, can you try out our new tool? It's free, but I don't, unless it's a really expensive tool, I don't care about the cost of it, the $80 a month or $10. I don't care. It's the implementation of it. It takes so much time to learn how to use it and to connect it to all of our other information and changes the client experience. So it's all a time problem almost, unless it's again a super expensive tool. So that's a lot of times the challenge is just like trying to look at this sea of tools and go, okay, these are the ones that are going to actually solve our problems. And I try to let people pitch me on their tools somewhat regularly, partly to hear how they pitch and think like, do I want to steal any of that for when I'm talking to my clients, But I mean, just a lot of times they just can't stop talking about the tool and won't talk about the problem that I'm talking about. Do you know what I mean? Like it's very difficult for them to switch from features to benefits.
This is where I sit at the intersection between end user and customers and service providers. So actually, I find it very, very difficult to find a tool that does the job. So as a business analyst, as a person who comes in and see what's the problem we're trying to solve and try to find a solution. The gray area is that users don't ask the right questions to the vendors, in which I want to know what this tool is going to do to me versus what this tool does. So this is where we come from first as a business analyst and project manager, that we sit with the client and say, what exactly you're trying to solve here? Do we really need to invest in a new tool to solve it? Or is there a process internally that we can use it? Like I was working with a law firm in Canada, one of the top 5, and they wanted to invest like $18,000 to $90,000 in a new machine, in a new software that helps with the onboarding system. And I started sitting with them. Okay, they have like this crazy 120 process where every person needs to do something, and HR doesn't know what's happening. No one's tracking it. No one's know what's happening exactly. But everybody know what they should do. And they said, why? Why do you need this tool? Just to send out automatic email reminders? This is something you can build with Power Automate. So instead of investing 80 to 90K, I just put up the solution for them for like 3K for us.
Yeah.
And the difficult part was collecting all the requirements that you need versus and making that work the same way, the exact way you do it now.
Yeah.
This is what we do at Think Innovation. And
is that called a PRD? Is that what like a project requirements document or something like that?
It's a business requirement document, so BRD. It's definitely what it says, what the business requires. Okay, I need, for example, in this case, I wanted to send an email notification someone is joining within 20 days, and then a reminder in 10 days, and in 10 days it will send out the email to marketing team, to the payroll to start working on their documents. And you have to put this workflow, and you mentioned these requirements. Now I go to the vendor and say, hey, show me how it works as per these requirements. I want you to demo how it works this way, not just your sales demo for us.
Right.
And
well, it's funny because so it makes me think of 2 tech adoption experiences we had. We heard about CRM, and so we were like, oh, everybody's got a CRM. We got to have a CRM. So what's the best CRM? Salesforce. So we're like trying to do Salesforce, and it is so complicated, right? So like 2 weeks in, we were like, forget this. This wasn't, we're out. And so we've probably done that 3 or 4 times with CRMs where we're like, okay, we're going to do CRM now. And then we're just like, no, this is way too hard. It's not worth it. And then on the other end, we started using, so like one of the pain points in my practice is there are these really long police body camera videos that we get.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
watching them is really boring and time consuming. And so we decided to try Otter to just transcribe them, and then it would help us skip to the part of the video that has the parts that we need based on what people are saying. Immediate win. Like it was so easy to use, and it saved us time immediately, and clients were happier. I mean, it was just like a very easy win for us. We may not need Otter anymore because I think because we use Google Drive, and I think Google Drive will now basically transcribe them in the same way. So like a lot, like you said, a lot of times we have multiple things that we're paying for that can all do the same thing, and we have to decide which of them to use. But like again, it's not the cost of Otter compared to this time it's saving us is just like super, super easy. But it's like this very specific requirement. I need transcribed videos. And then we can very easily see if it does it or not. Whereas with the CRM, we weren't totally sure why we wanted it. We just knew that everybody else had it. And so the requirements kind of got out of control, and it ended up being unsuccessful.
Yeah, I mean, it's always for me, it's about getting it right to the customer to get it right because that's the win for me. Find what they need and get it right. Like
Yeah.
there's like a gazillion AI tool. Now you mentioned earlier that you have 3 AI tools that you use between Gemini, ChatGPT, and I forgot the third one, maybe
Claude, yeah.
Cloud AI. So if you put them together, if you benchmark how AI tools operate, it will tell you exactly the strengths and weaknesses of each and every single one because it's like you have 3 different mechanics, right? But one is for
Yeah.
trucking mechanic, and one is a car mechanic, and one is an EV mechanic. They're all mechanics, but everyone has his own specialty. So
Yeah.
this is how
But the thing is that with those, like, they don't totally know what they can do yet. Do you know what I mean? Like, so even Claude, the makers of Claude, they don't know for sure what it can do. And so like I subscribe to this AI newsletter that's like we can't think about AI as a skill that you like achieve. It's something that we're all developing alongside the tools as the tools develop. And so like that's why I kind of like being able to give the same problem to all three. And then over time I go, okay, I like my body just starts noticing, okay, I like this one better for this, I like this one better for that. And then sometimes, like, because I've been using the thinking version of the models more. So I'll get, and you can't really do two at once. So I'll give ChatGPT something where I want like deep research and it's going to take it 10 or 15 minutes to do it. And then I go chat about something kind of related to it with Claude and wait for it to give me a notification that it's right. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of this nice thing. But yeah, it's weird. Like with Excel, I think the makers of Excel knew what Excel could do, but the makers of ChatGPT, they made it and they're like, here's some things we found it's able to do, but like we're sure you're going to come up with cooler stuff. And it's very different when the tool makers don't know what the tool can make. It's a very different experience.
and every tool is gonna give you its own perspective based on the data it was taught and based on uh I remember seeing a video that if you do a simple calculations using your iPhone versus a calculation using the calculator, you end up having different results, and that's based on how it did the calculations internally. Like, you have to do the brackets, then the addition. So this is the similar situation. I'm gonna touch a little bit about your book, The Business.
Sure.
You wrote a book, The Business of
Yeah.
Criminal Law.
Sure did.
Was that 2017, 2018?
2017, yeah. I think it's funny that I remember this, but it was November of 2017. Yeah.
So what's one lesson from that book that you still use today or daily?
Okay, yeah. Sometimes when I want to learn something difficult that I'm a lot of times doing at the time, at least starting to write a book can be a helpful way to like force myself to learn it more carefully. So the problem we were dealing with at the time was we were trying to switch from being a very low cost, kind of high volume firm to raising our prices. And so that book was about raising prices, really, more than anything at that time. And so I had this conversation with a friend of mine. We were getting to know each other, and I was like, what do you do? And he's like, I'm a consultant. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Like, everybody's a consultant. I don't know what that means. He's like, well, let me show you. And so we just sat down and, had like a 45-minute conversation. And I was complaining about how I was running to courts all the time and didn't feel like I was making any more money, even though I was working all these extra hours. So anyway, we finished maybe we talked for a half hour, and he said, okay, I've never worked with lawyers, but I think you need to double or triple or quadruple your prices. And I said, that's no, you can't. There's so much competition. There's all these new lawyers coming out of law school. No way. And he's like, all right, maybe I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I've never worked with lawyers. And so then it just sat in my brain for a while. And so I was like, I want to try it. So I created kind of like a subset of my cases where I just said, if it's this type of crime, I'm going to charge this much instead of what I've charged before. And it was not a super easy process. Like everything in our firm had to change to support that pricing change. Like it was a very high leverage choice. Once we made that choice, we had to change everything else. But it really improved, I think, the quality of the work we could do for our clients, their experience, my experience as the lawyer providing the services. So anyway, that book was about making the jump from being somebody who has to compete on price to being somebody who could say, I'm uniquely good at this type of case. If you want me, here's what I cost. And if you don't want me, that's okay. And so, yeah, that's what that book's about.
It's about knowing your value, right? Where you value yourself and present it to the client in a way they're getting value. They're not getting the service.
That's right. So, and, I don't know that I could have charged those prices right when I started my practice. Yeah. So we started in 09, and I think we started making that change in probably 2015, 16. So we've been in business for 6 or 7 years. And I kind of think of those first 6 or 7 years as my internship, kind of the time when I was just learning how to be a lawyer and how to be a criminal defense lawyer. But then I'd gotten to the point where I did have real expertise, but I hadn't figured out how to, like you said, communicate that to the client. So we had to do that, and it had to change how we answered the phone and how we texted our clients and what kinds of offices we had. Like we had to change every single thing to support that.
And what's your most proud when it comes to your team and your client relationship? You look like you're very much in good relationship with your client. So what's
It's
most
funny.
proud?
We had 2 very angry clients yesterday, which is not, it's, so I think some of my clients I have a great relationship with, and we're trying to learn from the clients that are not happy. I think in the past I would feel a little bit defensive about it, and be like, kind of blame them, like it's your, you're not taking responsibility. But I'm trying to say like, oh, like they're not happy and they're right that they're not happy. Like they're the experts on how they feel. So, I mean, I think like something that's, well, okay, let me tell you something that I do. I have a tendency to be very critical of people and to focus on their faults. I think I have a little bit of a perfectionist tendency for myself, and I can sometimes inflict that on my clients. So something that I've been trying to do is I met with these 2 public defenders that are starting their own practice. And they said, the part I hate the most is the sales. And I was like, oh, really interesting. Tell me about that. And they were like, I just, like when I was a public defender, they would just bring me clients and I would just do my best for them. And I never had to like try to convince them to hire me. I was like, that's really interesting that you framed it that way, because that's not quite how I think about it. Well, so like, I think that it can be very kind of toxic to the relationship to try to control someone or try to manipulate someone. And sometimes we can do it without them noticing, but a lot of times they can notice. And so, like we also know though that people like people who like them, right? And so like some person comes to me and they've committed this horrible crime. How am I going to like this person? So I've been trying this thing where I listen to them and I'm looking for things that I admire about them, even acknowledging the mistakes they've made. So like an example might be I'll have a client who comes in and they're facing jail time for a serious crime. And they just keep saying like, I'm just really concerned how this is going to affect my kids. And so instead of focusing on like, that's something I would never do. I would never have robbed that bank. I've never represented a bank robber, but like hypothetically, I would never rob a bank. But then I'll try to say like to the client, hey, a lot of people in your situation would be focused on how it's going to affect themselves, but you're focused on how it's going to affect your kids. And so I really admire how you're kind of looking at this from your family's perspective. I can tell you're a caring father. And again, I'm not trying to be manipulative. I'm trying to like really notice and feel that for them. I feel like they deserve a lawyer who sees the good in them, even if some of their stuff is not good, And so, yeah, like I think sometimes we think of relationship building as sort of like a tactic to get people to do what we want them to do. I don't think that's a very healthy way to think about it. I think it's better to think about it as an actual relationship. I don't go to lunch with my clients. That's not the type of relationship we have. Like they don't come over to my house. Like I don't think that'd be safe. But I do care about my clients and want good things for them. And so I think trying to be sincere in building that relationship is a really helpful thing we can do for them that also results in more clients signing up and things like that. My sister's a social worker, and she recently went to a training where they said that, there's this idea of compassion fatigue, like being too compassionate, like burns you out. And the training said that's actually probably not accurate. The research says that compassion is actually very energizing. It's like a very connecting thing. It feels very good to us. What's exhausting and burns you out is fake compassion. Yeah. So it's when you're trying to appear to like your client, but you don't really like them, or you trying to appear to admire something from them, but you don't actually. So I found that like choosing where I put my focus, don't focus on myself, don't focus on their flaws, focus on something that I admire from them. Sometimes I'll write it down so that I can keep coming back to it in my mind while they're talking instead of being like repulsed by what they've done. So yeah, I think that actually building that relationship and being okay with it not being, a romantic relationship or it's not like a friendship where we're going to go to a movie together, but it is a relationship and it's one that I value.
Yeah. Well, Joshua, this has been fantastic. You've really shared a lot of insights that most firm owners would never talk to. And I think being compassionate is what makes us humans and differentiate us from AI and these tools that's more spreading all over the place. I really appreciate your time here, and it was very pleasure and eye-opening talking to you. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for me too, Mohammed. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I'm gonna stop the recording now.